All right, good morning. Welcome to Zoom with the Principal. Our topic today is the importance of sleep. We had the chat up and talking about how much sleep we're each getting, and it's just never enough, no matter what. So hopefully you guys are tuning in today because you know that sleep is important and you want some tips on how you yourself can get more sleep. And that we can encourage good sleep habits in our teenagers because they actually, as much sleep as we need as adults, they need more sleep. And this is just such a timely topic. I think all of us are just worn down right now. We're 1/3 of the way through the school year, and I've never been so tired at this point in the school year as I am this year. It's just a lot. And this weekend is like one of my favorite weekends because it's when we set the clocks back and we get that extra hour of sleep. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be excellent. So Miss Gunter, what do you have for us today?
Yes, I'm curious how many people signed on thinking about their kids' sleep habits versus how many signed on thinking about their own. And they really do, like Miss Davis said, go hand in hand. It's like how we sleep and our sleep patterns really do impact our kids. And the other thing is that it's so hard. How much control do we actually have about when they fall asleep, right? And how do we control the environment when we need to? And when do we know when we need to step in? And I think that's a difficult one because our kids are so inundated with work. They're so busy and they always say like, there's just not enough hours to sleep. And so I'll sit here in the office with kids every day and they'll be like, I can't give anything up. So how do you fix me without me having to go to bed earlier or change anything that I'm doing? And I'm like, well, I'm a social worker, not a miracle worker. So we're going to have to compromise a little bit. So that's kind of been the big theme of this year. Another thing to consider is coming back post quarantine, everybody's stamina is low. Like I literally have not been like an after school napper and I'm like burnt by the end of the day. And so as we've come back, I'm just noticing with the students, like after lunchtime, they're even more exhausted than I remember seeing them a couple of years back. Like just being here and being in this like overstimulating environment is exhausting for them emotionally, physically, mentally. And so taking that into consideration as well. And so the first thing I wanted to do, we'll call it a little quiz, if you will. And this is about sleep hygiene. And sleep hygiene is, basically how we prepare ourselves to sleep, all the healthy habits that go into sleeping well. And I think a lot of us and our teenagers have this habit of like, we're going to be busy all day, do the workout, get the dinner done, do all these things, and then I'm going to lay down and I'm supposed to instantly just shut down. And so I want to take you back to the time when you put your newborns, you put your toddlers to bed. And what did that routine look like? Were they outside playing on a play structure and then you just threw them into their bed and hope they fell asleep? Or was it a more gradual transitional process of getting them to bed? For me, it was, turning the lights down, maybe watching a quiet show, giving them a warm bath, giving them their bottle, reading them a story. And if you think about it, it was probably like an hour and a half of time that you're leading up towards going to bed. And that's sleep hygiene. That's like how you take care of yourself to put yourself in the frame of mind to go to bed. So I don't know if anybody thinks of bedtime that way, or if you just, sometimes we're just so exhausted. I will like literally be in my work clothes, face down in my bed, done. So sometimes that, but really it's like our kids are working on their AP class or whatever it is. And the expectation is just they turn off and, they don't have that time to transition. So thinking about sleep hygiene, I'm going to kind of run through a list of things that we're supposed to be doing. And some of these I don't do at all. And then just let me know, or just think to yourself, do I do these things? Or are these part of my habits? And the first one is, this is so huge, going to bed and getting up at the same time every day, including weekends and vacation. Training your brain, Ginny's smiling, I don't think it's happening in your world. It's not happening in mine either. But the importance of, even if our kiddos aren't getting an enormous amount of sleep, having their brains have the expectation of like when they're going to be asleep is really helpful. So are you going to bed at the same time?
I am, well, I mean, during the week I am, but when you include the weekends, no, I
I know, I feel like the
absolutely not.
weekend's a stretch. Like, let's start baby steps.
During the week I do, but the weekends, no, I don't.
Yeah. There's this idea that like your bed is just like for sleep, not for electronics, things like that. But they say if you can't fall asleep, you're supposed to actually get out of your bed, do something, and go back into your bed. I personally don't do that. I lay in my bed and hope for the best. What about you?
Yeah, no, though I don't usually have a problem falling asleep. That's not something I've ever really suffered with.
Right.
Though I don't, when people say that, your bed should just be for sleep, because I like to read laying down and I read a lot. And so I read in bed. I mean, and on a day where I don't have much to do, like on the weekends, if I have just a chill day, I will lay in bed and read. So
I love it. No, me too. And so, I mean, these are from the Sleep Foundation. This is like their sleep hygiene list. But again, I'm like, I haven't done that, but I hadn't actually thought about doing that. The next one is talking about like temperature and light in your bedroom. It's supposed to be dark. I always have the bathroom light on. I don't know why. I think I don't want to trip over everything and fall in the middle of the night. And for me, that's something that I've always done, but it says make sure your bedroom is quiet and dark and at a comfortable temperature. My bedroom is hot and light. How about yours?
no, mine's pretty dark. And I think temperature wise, it's probably pretty good. I mean, that's something that I've noticed as a woman getting older. I need it cooler in the bedroom. So
Yeah, no, definitely. The next one is, I know you're doing so well with your exercise during the day. Sometimes people's bodies are just not tired. They still have like pent up energy inside and we're expecting them to sleep and they're not. So making sure you get exercise during the day is going to help you sleep. Limiting your exposure to bright lights in the evenings. My husband is a loud TV watcher. He's got this 80-inch TV and the house is really loud at night. And so I've told him like, we need to like wind it down a little bit because we're transitioning into bedtime. And that's not happening in my house. So is that something that you all are doing? Making sure that it's not just so bright and loud and overstimulating as you're getting towards those sleep time hours. Establishing your bedtime routine, making sure that you're not eating right before bed. Our days are busy. Sometimes we're running late home from work. And by the time I get dinner ready, it's 7:38. And then I'm trying to get into bed by 9:30. Like that's not really good. And that probably is also keeping me up. And then caffeine drinkers. I'm a big time caffeine drinker. A lot of our students are. In fact, I just had a conversation like 15 minutes ago with a student who was saying, I can't tell what's wrong with me. I got up at 5:30. I drank 2 cups of coffee. I haven't eaten and my hands won't stop shaking.
oh, no.
And I'm like,
Poor baby.
well. And it's just like, if I don't do that, I get a headache. So it's kind of this like conversation about, okay, how do we like cut back on caffeine and making sure we're not doing it like after 12 o'clock, because then you're never going to sleep. And she was saying like, I don't sleep, I don't eat, and I drink lots of coffee. What's going on? How can you fix me? And I'm like, well, we got a long conversation to have. So we booked your appointment. So that's just like a basic, like, do we do these things? I think for me now, it's kind of like, I'm just so tired, I fall asleep. It's not a problem. But I remember being younger and it being an issue. And so why is sleep so important?
So I would say for me, with the sleep hygiene and setting those habits at night, is one thing I've done this year is, like you mentioned, I do exercise every day and I've been very religious about doing it before work. And I get up very, very early in the morning. But to do that, I've had to really reset my sleep clock, because naturally, if I just like on my like own body clock, I tend to like staying up to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then getting up at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning is probably where my body naturally likes to be.
Yeah.
But I can't do that and get up at 4 in the morning. So I've had to really like reset, and I'm forcing myself to go to bed at like 9 o'clock at night. But to do that, I've had to really like develop some like set like bedtime routines. Like I will wash my face. I will then like do a gentle stretch to like, work out the kinks, so that I'm not all stiff. If my mind is especially whirling with, just stuff, I will do a sleep meditation for like 10 minutes that will help like wind me down and like hit me into like that will knock me out. I will, melatonin has become my friend. um, and so that has really, I'm still not getting enough sleep. I think I was thinking about this morning driving in. If you had like before asked me how much sleep I get, I would probably say 6-7 hours. But I think we overestimate how much sleep we're getting because I've started, I have this fitness tracker that I wear and that it measures my sleep. And so how much sleep I'm actually getting, because it will monitor like how many times I wake up a night. And so it's like between 5 or 6 hours a night. So that's like an hour less than I thought I was getting. And yeah.
I'd be surprised for a lot of us, like just the tossing and turning, the getting up, the just thinking in bed, like how long are we actually sleeping? I'm going to kind of switch gears from my plan because I'm feeling like this is such a hard one. I have 3 teenagers, one in college. His sleep habits were destroyed during like COVID quarantine, like destroyed, like completely backwards. He was staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning. He would get up for classes halfway. A couple times the teacher said they could hear him breathing like he was sleeping. Like it was just so bad. And I would say it's probably taken the last 6 months for him to return to like being relatively normal. And I know for a lot of students, that's kind of the case. And it's like, I feel like when I'm talking, they're literally like here, like usually they'll listen to me about stuff, but it's just one of those things where they don't even want to discuss it because it would require them to make changes in the way that they prepare for school. And they don't want to do that. There's so many things where it's like, I have all these activities, I have all these classes, I don't sleep at all, I'm miserable. But like I said earlier, like, what do I do besides give up the activities that I like and go to bed? And I'm like, I don't have an answer for you. There literally is not. And so what's happening is your body's giving you red flags, you're ignoring them. And now we just have to stand by and wait until you crash and burn. Like, how do we, we can't force them, right? We've implemented a couple of things in our house as of late, and it's been helpful for myself and my kids. And I'll be honest, we haven't made friends doing it. My kids are not happy. In fact, one of my boys hasn't talked to my husband since this started, and this has been about 2.5 weeks. And what he did is he attached the telephone, the video games, the TV, all to this app that we have, and it shuts everything down completely at 10 o'clock, everything. So they can't go on YouTube, they can't, nothing. And then we have them give us their phones. They are so mad. They are so mad. Prior to this, my 8th grader was sleeping on the couch. I could not get him to go in his bedroom. He was just saying, oh, I like to be out here. But he was watching TV and like YouTube videos all night long. And so I'd come and I'd make him go to his room. Since we turned the TV off at 10 p.m., that kid has been in his bed at 9:45 every single night. Again, he's not talking to my husband, but he's sleeping and he's actually in a better mood than I've seen him probably in the last 1.5 years. And it was one of those things where it was like so bad that I had to intervene because I was just like not being a great mother, like to allow him to have that freedom.
Yeah, I've had something similar, and I'm like curious because it's with my son. I never had this problem really with my daughter. I mean, she would stay up, and like text with her friends, but like having her like play video games and like sleeping on the couch, like that was not something I ever had to deal with my daughter. But with my son, absolutely. I mean, during the summertime, like we were like, oh my gosh, you're a vampire, where he would sleep all day and be up all night, and like we had to like really like. And if we're not on him with his sleep, he will do that. And so our compromise has been like, no, on school nights, you have to sleep in your bed. You have to be in bed by 10 o'clock. You have to, and because you have to get up and go to school. Friday nights, my husband and I go to bed. Nathan's probably roaming the house at 5 a.m. We're like, whatever. Friday night is your night. This is our compromise. You can stay up, play video games. Saturday, because we have to get him back and ready, start getting him ready for Monday. We're a little bit more strict, but Friday night is his night. Like that's our compromise, that like you get to be you, do whatever.
Those are the best nights when you get to go to bed and you're like, I don't do what you want to do. Just don't wake me up. Like, yeah. I'm curious for everyone else. Like, is this a conversation in your house? Is this a struggle in your house? What does this look like? What's been helpful for you, if anything, or are you still kind of at a loss of what to do? I mean, how do you argue with your kid that says, if you turn off the Wi-Fi at 11 o'clock, I'm not going to be able to finish my homework? How do we deal with that? How is that happening in your house? I don't really have kids that want to stay up late and study, so I don't have that issue yet. But how do you find a balance? I've talked to parents about, setting the expectation. If they know their internet is going to get shut off at 11, they have to make some really hard decisions about what's happening after school. Maybe they're going home and taking a nap. Maybe they have sports or extracurricular activities that they're doing, and that doesn't all fit into those hours, right? If we block out 7-8 hours for sleep, what does that leave them time to do with? I don't know if they still do that, Jenny. Remember when they were going to take AP classes and they're supposed to kind of write out how much time they're going to spend on each class and then try to see if it's feasible. What was always so funny to me is I've never met a kid that was like, oh, that doesn't look like it's going to work out for me. The math doesn't add up. I'm not going to be able to take that class. I never heard a kiddo say that, even though we're trying so hard to let them know, this is going to be a lot for you. And then we come halfway through the semester and I have, students asking me what do I have to do or say for Ms. Pereira to let me out of this class? Because it's too much. I just don't have enough time.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think we've done that for the past couple of years because, well, the pandemic threw everything into with what we normally do with kids when they sign up for classes. But that's definitely something that we should bring back. And so what if parents don't know what we're talking about? It was basically just a time management worksheet where the student had to map out, this is how much, time I'm actually in school. This is how much time I need to do homework. If I'm in a sport, this is how much time that would take. If I have a job, this is how much time that would take. And then they had to also schedule in sleep. This is how much sleep I need. And then to just add up, because there's only 24 hours in the day. And that was really the idea with it. And we do it for kids that are signing up for AP classes, because AP classes, as we hopefully all know, take way more time for homework. It's probably at least double the amount of time. And the idea is to have students make choices. Do they really need to take this AP class? Is that something that, because there is only 24 hours in the day. And so they're not going to be able to do 5 AP classes, be in a sport, do all the clubs and do it and still get sleep and be healthy. There's just not enough time. So having to prioritize and make choices, it's really, really hard. Yeah.
I know.
The tardies for first period. Yeah.
We only sleep between 5 and 6 hours. Is that your whole family? Your whole family only sleeps that much? And then how many tardies are we getting to first period class? First period is early. I dropped my son off here to work out at 7, and there's so many kids up and out. I can't remember ever being up that early when I was that young. So it's
well, I mean, and that's the thing. They won't be up that early next year. School is going to start at 8:30. That's a new law in California. And I sent out, this kind of ties in. The reason for that law is because teenagers aren't getting enough sleep, and it's trying to force additional sleep. And I sent the survey out, to students and parents about, this sort of thing. And a lot of the comments, especially from the students, were well, I'm not going to get more sleep. I am going to disagree. I think this law will force more sleep. I just know my own daughter, when she was in high school, her high school did start at 8:30. That was just their start time. They didn't start before that. And she did, she slept later. It was really nice. So I think next year it's going to be an adjustment for all of us. I don't know quite what the schedule is going to look like just yet. I probably won't know closer to January. We'll really narrow it down. But there is going to be a later start. And I think that will be interesting for us as a school culture on how do we adjust to that. I think a lot of people are like, well, is there a workaround with the law and that sort of thing? I had this conversation with our department chairs yesterday afternoon in our staff meeting, and everybody's trying to find these workarounds and the loopholes. And I was like, hey guys, the intention of the law is that school starts at 8:30. Like that's the whole point of this. School starts at 8:30.
Yeah.
So, and it's because of teenagers not getting enough sleep. That's the whole purpose of this law.
Yeah. I mean, the norm right now that I hear is students going to bed 1, 2, 3 in the morning. So typically they have to get up at 6:30. Well, if they don't start till 8:30, they could sleep until 7:30. And that's like the most solid sleep they're going to get is those hours, like right when the sun's coming up. So for me, I'm like, absolutely. Like, I think I don't know. I mean, and I think any extra time is helpful, even if it's just an hour. It's like just a little bit extra, and yeah, I've heard kids say like, that we have to be here later and, this and that, and I'm not going to sleep anyways. It just gives me more time to study. And I'm like, we'll see. We'll see how it goes when we don't have a choice. Miss Ian says, I'm happy about the 8:30 start time. That will help. That will definitely help. I mean, like I said, it's just like for all of us, like I feel like even now for me, like I have an extra half an hour to just lay there and like prepare myself for the day that I never had before. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see how it goes, but I know that, the frustration is that no matter what I say, my kids, the kids here, it's like, there is no understanding that sleep is so much more important than whatever it is you're doing until they're in the breakdown zone. We've talked about the stress curve before, like the optimum stress, and then they start to get like a little more uncomfortable and distressed because they're overloaded. And then quickly we go into the burnout phase. And I have kids in the burnout phase still, again, asking me like, what can I do besides sleep? Nothing. No, there's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, Vincent brings up a good point in the chat. The quality of sleep is also an important factor to the number of sleep hours. Like if you're tossing and turning and not getting like really restful sleep, that's a really important. And that's where, we talk about those sleep routines and like not having caffeine in the afternoon and especially in the evening. I mean, teenagers are teenagers, right? They think they're invincible. I know that I was never one to drink coffee in the afternoon, but certainly like back in the days where I was drinking soda, I mean, I had Coke Zero at night and like, I was like, oh no, it doesn't affect my sleep. Yeah, it did. It affected my quality of sleep and like how deeply am I sleeping and how much restful that REM sleep, how much restful sleep are you getting?
Yeah. My son, my ninth grader came home and he said, oh, I can go to bed later. My friend said that if I drink a Red Bull, it like is in exchange for an hour of sleep is what he said.
Oh my no.
I'm like, what? Who was telling you this? He's like, my friend said that he drinks a Red Bull like around 9:00 at night. And then it kind of like, I was like, this is like the wildest thing I've ever heard. And he asked me, would you buy me some Red Bulls? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, are you crazy? Like, what is going on? So I don't even know what they were thinking. It was just all these people just try to find the workaround of like, how do I not go to bed? And like, it's hard as an adult now because I love my bed. Like, I really do. Like, what, just being there and just winding down from the day. And it's like, I totally understand the worry of like, if I go to sleep, I'm losing hours when I can get ahead.
Well, and I think that when we talk, I mean, and like many of the things that we talk about in these meetings and just like stuff we worry about with our teenagers and just with ourselves and just stress and anxiety, depression, just overall physical health, weight loss, that all comes down to sleep. Like sleep is probably the number one thing that a person can do to improve their overall mental and physical health. And it's the thing that we probably neglect the most and we like don't really think about it. And it's so important.
Yeah. So we talk about like teens and sleep and like their brains are still developing. They need that sleep to like completely develop their brains. Why is sleep important? It's, just their thinking patterns and the ability to like achieve academically is so grounded in like your brain being rested. Your brain cannot retain information if it's exhausted. And so these kiddos are in like survival mode, trying to like pound on all these things. And I tell them, your brain can only do what you've prepared or taken care of it enough to do. If you don't let it sleep, if you're not feeding it with like calories and fuel, yet you're expecting it to perform all day for you, like that would be like putting water in your gas tank and expecting it to travel for you, right? And that's what's happening. It's important for memory, for decision making. For me, it's always the focus on emotional health. There is no mental health disorder that doesn't benefit from getting more sleep. My kids are anxious. When they're exhausted, they're more anxious. They have more like exaggerated emotional responses. Their moods are off. They're irritable. And then, they're like, I'm just moody all the time and all this stuff. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, sleep. Like, there is no medication. There is no therapy that is better for you than sleep. And I just like cannot express that enough. And it just is, again, like literally in 1 year, prolonged sleep loss can negatively affect emotional development. Like, the way that students are able to like interact with each other. If you're tired, you're not really reading social cues and emotional signals. I mean, it can even impact your relationships. Nobody wants to be friends with somebody who's crabby all the time, right? And a lot of times it's like, that's what's going on. Physically, like sleep contributes to every single system in our body, whether it's like our muscles, our hormones. And so physically, it's like, if you're not getting sleep, again, we're demanding this powerful organ in our body to perform with no fuel, no rest. The one that kind of, well, not kind of, but definitely worries me a lot is just about like decision making. I don't know if anybody else here has a kiddo that's driving now. And I'm already a worrywart when it comes to my kid being in the car and driving. And then to add to that, like if he hasn't slept, I'm worried, right? If he's trying to drive and he's exhausted and he's pushing himself to the limit. And so if you're not sleeping, you're putting yourself in a situation where, you're more likely to fall asleep when you're driving. Talks about risky behavior too. It says sleep deprivation can affect the development of the frontal lobe, a part of the brain that is critical to control impulsive behavior. Not surprisingly, numerous studies have found that teens who do not get enough sleep are more likely to engage in behaviors like drinking, texting while driving, riding their bike without a helmet, failing to use their seatbelt, drug use, alcohol abuse. Like all these things are directly related to lack of sleep. And so for me, with my driver, like that's an extra thing. But again, it's like he's living in a dorm now, so I don't have that much control. And so, my hope is that I taught him something while he was home. That's always my worry.
So I think that leads us into what I was thinking, like, what are the solutions? Because I think this is one area, as parents, we're used to our teenagers not listening to us. Mm-hmm. And this is definitely an area where they are going to resist listening to their parents. We nag them about, you got to go to bed, you're going to need more sleep. And they're just, I know my kids will ignore me, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. And so I think this is one area, where Yvonne, you said, like, hopefully I've taught him. I think that, and this is why we're talking about our own personal sleep as adults, because modeling good sleep hygiene and good sleep behavior is actually the best way to get through to your kid. And it's kind of like a sneaky form of manipulation where you talk about your own sleep, like, oh, I've been so tired, I'm not getting enough sleep. And so you just can be like, because you think your kids aren't listening to you, but they sort of are, where you just like, oh, so I made this change. I started going to bed early. I, did a sleep meditation. It helped me so much. I fell right asleep and like, I feel so much better today. And just like doing little things like that, like starts, and it's a slow process, but it starts to sink in with your kids and they start like, oh, maybe I could try that, and it's not going to happen just one time. You got to keep doing this, and you got to keep chipping away at it. But I personally think that's the best way to get through to your teenager, because if you just lecture them about, oh, you need the sleep, and then they see you as the adult getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep and you too are exhausted and cranky and not getting enough sleep, it's, they're not going to listen to us as much.
I like to think about our morning routines. I don't know whose routines are stressful. It's way less stressful now that only 2 kids live at home than 3. But before quarantine, I was trying to get 3 kids to school. 1 to the elementary, 1 to the middle, 1 to the high school. So they all had different schedules. They all were on different sleep schedules. Some of them were easier to get up in the morning, and it was an absolute fiasco. I'm trying to pack the lunches. I'm trying to finish some case notes. I'm trying to make sure that their clothes are ready and help them with homework. It was just a really gosh, now that I think about it, it was a very horrendous time. It was very stressful. And so I remember the more I did in the evening, the more they did in the evening, the more we got along in the morning, because they're mom is a nightmare on the way to school. She's yelling at us and yelling at the driver in front of her. And it was because I was one, I was tired. 2, I did not prepare well for the day coming up. And so then I had to get up extra early to get everything done. And so that was one of my priorities a couple of years back, was to start getting things done in the evening so that we don't hate each other on the way to school. Because it was literally me honking my horn, my poor neighbors at 6:30, come on, let's go. Somebody was always late. It was just chaos. But when I really slowed down and did things a little more intentionally and methodically to be prepared for my day, that for me was a huge part of my sleep hygiene, because I knew that preparing the night before and getting to do that earlier was part of my routine. It was I do the nighttime stuff. I wash my face, I brush my teeth, I, get ready, get my clothes out for the next day. And it was super helpful. And when I started to do that, I would be packing my lunch at night and my kids would come over and pack their lunch with me. Or I got this, it was kind of an aromatherapy lotion. And so I would go lay down and I would rub it on their hands, and they can smell lavender at night. And that's for babies. And then it got to the point where we would do our routine, and then they're where's our hand lotion? And so it just kind of became this thing. And I want to say it was probably 2 months before it shut down. We were grooving. We were just we had a routine. We were getting along. We were feeling a little bit more rested, and it took a lot of effort, but like you said, just them seeing what I did was super helpful. And then they were we don't have to deal with her in the morning. So I thought that was pretty awesome. How can teens get better sleep? It says teens who are having difficulty sleeping, because it could be some kids have sleep disorders. Sometimes they really have insomnia, and it's not impacted by, or it's not only impacted by what's going on in their lives. If it's really bad and you just can't figure it out, definitely talk to their doctor. Make sure that the pediatrician is looking for underlying things, making sure there's, their blood work's good, all that stuff. Depending on the cause of the sleep problem, sometimes they'll give you melatonin. Sometimes kids might actually need some sort of sleep medication to help with whatever is going on in their lives. But that's not the only treatment. Making sure that we're doing these things, creating consistent pre-bedtime routines. I don't think it's helpful for us to tell them exactly what time to go to bed, but I do think it's helpful for us to expect some, dialogue about, what works for you? When do you feel the best? We kind of have to put it in their court. When do you guys feel the best? When you sleep more, how did you feel today knowing that you only got 4 hours of sleep? How did that impact you throughout the day? I have kiddos that go into the wellness center, and I'm okay, 15 minutes on the beanbag chair. By the time I go in there, they're just passed out cold.
Oh no.
And I'm oh my gosh, you're only supposed to be here 15 minutes. I'm gently tapping them, and it's I can see the exhaustion. And what I noticed is when they went into the wellness center to start to decompress and sit there and just kind of enjoy the music, they were out. And I'm that's something that you can do at home, not just here, because right now you got to go back to math. Right? So just knowing how exhausted they are. Caffeine, maybe don't buy your kiddos Red Bull. I know I keep getting the pressure to do that. I will not. I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that my freshman is a coffee drinker. I don't know how that happened. When I was young, that wasn't something that I was ever allowed to do. And with Starbucks like a thing, it just kind of happened. And so, I told him like, can we at least shoot for something caffeine free? And he's like, no, not yet. So something we're working on is for both of us is trying to limit caffeine. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about devices. And we've had this kind of going for a while, Ginny, about like, do they charge their phones away from their bed? Like, if I leave my kid's phone in their room, would they ever think, it's time to put this away so I can get some good rest? Or will they just be on it all hours of the night until they finally fall asleep? What are your thoughts on this piece?
This is hard. And there was a period, like, oh gosh, I guess it was about 3 years ago now, where I was making everybody plug in their devices down in our dining room at night. My husband was like the biggest resistor. He was not having it, but I was like, no, we have to set the example. So he was super mad at me about it. And it worked. It worked for like a while. I actually noticed with myself at the time, like, I was going to bed earlier and like, because my phone wasn't right next to me. I bought an alarm clock because my phone's my alarm clock. We don't do that anymore. Mainly because for me to get up at 4 a.m, I literally have 4 alarm clocks. I have the real alarm clock, my phone, and then my watch that goes off.
Oh my God.
I have a wake up routine too on how I actually get up that early because it is really difficult for me. But so with my son, my daughter now is in college and she's working, and she's still living at home, but I'm like, I feel like she's more like a roommate at this point. I'm not doing a lot of like nagging her and parenting her. In my mind, she's an adult and she's gonna have to figure that out. And she's doing a good job with it. I'm not concerned. My son, he does have a phone. He doesn't use it all that much. He's still just 12. So the phone's not that big of a deal with him. The iPad is, because that's where, he watches his YouTube videos, plays his video games. And so, yeah, we have to take it away at night. We just like, okay, we're not going to end, he has his laptop too. And so we just have to take that stuff away. And then we do give him melatonin because he does need to, he's somebody that, and he's always been this way. Like, some kids are good sleepers and they'll just like go to bed, and like some are not. I mean, Nathan, even when he was a baby, he was difficult to get to go to sleep. He always has been, he's not a great sleeper. Once he's asleep, he's out, but he's always been difficult to get to sleep. But we have to, because he is somebody that like cannot function with not enough sleep. He gets super grumpy. He doesn't pay attention in school. He doesn't participate in class. Like, there's just such a noticeable difference with him when he's getting enough sleep and when he's not. I mean, he's like two different kids. And so it's something we have to be really on this, because it just, if he doesn't get enough sleep, like one day, maybe it's not a great thing, but like he can get by it. Like 2 days in a row of not sleeping well, he falls apart. It's like, we have to be like really strict with this.
How does he respond to the expectations of like taking electronics away and getting into bed and taking the melatonin? Because there's been a couple nights where I literally tried to like put the melatonin in my 8th grader's mouth, and he's like, not tired, not going to bed, because he knows it works. So
it's a fight. No, it's a fight. Like, we have to fight with him. I mean, it's like some days are easier, and those are the days my husband and I are like, oh thank God. Yeah. But it's not normally, like, I'm gonna be honest, it's a fight. I mean, it's not pleasant. Mm-hmm. He's moody, he's 12. Yeah, it's not a pleasant thing. We have to, he'll only take the melatonin if we put it in some lemonade and like it's the drops. God. I mean, it's a whole thing. It's
created.
Yeah, it's
I would be curious to know if there are any parents who have found a successful like bedtime expectation and routine and your kid still likes you. Like, that's my, like, if I can figure that out, I think I'd be rich. Because I think that's the hardest thing. It's like, I try the nice way. Like, I try to like, let's go to bed. And then I have to turn into like, control mom, like shutting it all down and you're going to bed. And then again, they don't like me anymore. And
Yeah.
like trying to find that middle ground of like, has anyone had success? Or I think if you start when they're little and it just is what it's been. But I think coming in, as I always tell parents, like you're coming in the ninth inning, like you're coming in the ninth inning, how are we going to change this behavior?
Right. And I think we have to
Do
give ourselves a break too. And because Yvonne, you brought it up in the beginning, like with the pandemic and having that year and a half at home where they weren't getting up and having to go to school. I know for myself, when I was just working at home, I was getting more sleep, just not having to drive and commute. Like yeah, that was extra sleep I was getting. And the same thing with our kids. You know, if they had to like wake up 5 minutes before class started and just turn on their computer, that's more sleep. It's different now. And so those morning like routine, I mean, yeah, it's just, I don't want to say I have all the answers because it's a fight every day.
Yeah, it's like we can't recreate the like quarantine because it's like everybody was like having, well, for the most part, like having healthier habits, spending more time with their family, getting more rest. And then it's like now that we're back to reality, it's almost harder than it was before. Because again, like with the stamina, with the change, with like this new, obligation to like leave your house again, it's like, I'm trying so hard to work with students of just like, let's just try to make little small changes so that you can get here to school on time. Like, what can we do to give you even an additional 30 minutes of sleep at night?
Yeah.
That's probably like one of the biggest parts of my job this year is like doing like little schedules in the evening. Like, what should that look like? So I don't think it's that they don't want to. It's just like maybe they don't even know how. Like, how do you slow down a like really fast moving train, which is what they've been doing all this time, and now they're realizing that it's catching up to them.
Well, and so part of the in scheduling this particular topic for this time of year was a little bit intentional, so that to get parents to start thinking about this and knowing that in 6 weeks we have 2 weeks off, and that is a great time to, because your kids are going to be like they're going to get more sleep, right? They're going to be, and like after a couple of days, they tend to like fall into their normal, like how much, like, because there's going to be catch up time. And then after a couple of days of that, they'll fall into like, how much sleep do they actually really need? And it's probably for a teenager going to be around 10 hours of sleep a night. Like a teenager should be getting around 10 hours. And so that would be a great time, when they're relaxed, there's not all the stress of school, to start having these conversations about, okay, when we come back in January and school starts again, what are some good sleep habits that we can have to maintain like this natural rest? And so like, I wanted to like introduce this topic now for you as parents to start thinking about this and then making your plan of like, okay, over the 2-week break, what can we do to hopefully in the second semester have better sleep routines? And then again, like do it for yourself too, and like use that modeling as a parent for your own self, because we need the sleep too. It's really all of us, are, we're all about the same age, middle-aged, and sleep is really important. There's a lot of health concerns that come as we get older, and sleep is like a cure for a lot of it.
Lower your risk of heart disease, more social emotional intelligence, preventing depression. That's a good one when you're starting to get up into the empty nest age. We definitely need to protect and prevent that. Lower inflammation, stronger immune systems, like all the things that we totally need to be well. And, the recommendations for teenagers is like beyond what I ever hear a kid can do. Like literally there's not enough hours for some of these students. It's like 8 to 10 hours, which only leaves them 14 hours. And how many of those hours are in school? Right. And then like one of the parents just said, it's like, there's also the peer pressure. My son's friends are only available after 11. And he says he can't say that he's not available after 10:30. They'll laugh at him. It's a huge social time between like 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning. Like all the students are like talking to another. It's how they wind down. We talked about transition to fall asleep. They wind down, but it's like, then they get exciting news and the drama's going on and it kind of like re-amps them up. And they're not sleeping, but it's like we want them to socialize. We want them to have fun. My goal for students here is to be like happy, healthy, successful, graduate, and have some good memories doing it. And I don't know that that's the case for a lot of people. So if those late night hours are very important because we do want them to be connecting, but how do we have that so that they're able to do that earlier in the day? This is kind of like their celebratory time at the end of the day where they finish what they needed to do and now they just get to chill out with their friends. Like, I think it's important, but how do we scale it back to be at a reasonable hour? Or, I hear a lot of like, you almost get like credibility for not sleeping a lot. It's kind of like a cool thing to say, like, oh yeah, I only got 3 last night. Oh, I got 2.5, or I got 4, and look, here I am. And it's like almost like glorify the fact that we're not taking care of ourselves. And that's like, adults, teenagers, all of us have done that. Like, oh, I only get 4 or 5. It's almost like, look at
Badge of
me.
honor. Yeah.
I'm powerful, a total badge of honor.
It's funny. I don't know, Yvonne, like, I mean, maybe students might be more honest with you when they're talking about this. Is usually if they're coming to you, they're talking about like their problems and what's going on. When I talk to students and it's a question I ask, how much sleep are you getting? And they will always tell me, oh, I get like 9 hours of sleep. And I'm like, why are you lying to me right now? Like there's no way that you're getting that much. Like, I just don't believe you. But
no, because that would mean they're going to bed at 9 o'clock at night, even though they were in the like drama production until 8:30. Like, maybe, I mean, if there's someone out there who has a kiddo that sleeps that much, I would challenge all of us to take a guess at how many hours our kids are getting. And then I don't know how honest they'll be with you. If you've got that type of relationship where they will, ask them, like, how many hours are you legitimately getting of sleep every night?
Or download a sleep app on their phone, because there's like sleep apps and like you can like put the phone on the mattress when they're sleeping and it will like track. They're actually pretty good. They'll track the amount of sleep and like how much tossing and turning they're getting, and then like have them show you their sleep data. I mean, it's, I think it would be surprising for them too, because again, I think they think they're getting more hours. I don't know if they're just counting the time that they're laying in bed as sleep, but
that doesn't count.
It's not counting.
Those are pretty reliable though. Like just putting your phone, like the apps are pretty reliable. That's a good one to have them do. One of the things that I have them use on if they have like an iPhone or whatever is how many times you pick up your phone during the day. Mm-hmm. And how aligned is that with how stressed you were that particular day? And it is wild. Like we'll see like on Monday when it wasn't too stressful, they pick up their phone 60 times. On Tuesday, when they had that big exam and things were really stressful with their friends, like 180 times. And so to be able to see the data, it does something to them because they have this realization of like, oh my gosh, like your iPhone's not lying, right? And so hopefully with sleep, maybe that would help them see like, okay, I know that you think you're getting 9 hours, but when we look at this, it's telling me that you get 5.5, which is clearly not enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have time if anybody has some last minute questions they want to put in the chat. Next week, there's no school next Thursday. So, hey, an extra sleep day. So next Thursday is Veterans Day. There is no school. There is school, by the way, on Friday. So I know that's going to be weird that we've just got this like day off in the middle of the week, but there is school on Friday. So make sure your kids come to school on Friday. But so because there's no school next Thursday, we will not have a Zoom with the principal next week. The week after, though, we're going to talk about family communication. So all of these things where we're like, talk to your kid and you're like, how do I talk to my kid about that? They never listen to me. Our next topic is family communication. So hopefully we'll give some better hints on how you actually have these conversations. Because I know we're like, yeah, talk to your kid about that. And that's.
You're like, you mean my kid that's been locked in their room since 3:30, that kid? Yeah, let's talk to him.
Yeah.
I feel it. It's difficult. Yeah. Any questions about anything? Sleep, how your kiddos are doing, the schedule next year?
The schedule next year.
Well, can we make sure that they can't do football practice at 7 a.m.? Because that's my worry.
Yeah.
The workaround.
I know it's hard. One thing with the schedule that I am hoping we'll be able to incorporate is hopefully we'll incorporate a tutorial period. and I know that like, it was interesting because in the survey I sent out, you know, people's perception of tutorial and like a block schedule, I think is based on distance learning, and like, no, that didn't work. But so, you know, in reality though, when it's not distance learning, sorry, I had to my brain went off. In reality, that when it's not distance learning, like it actually is a less stressful, like when there's a tutorial, like that's time in the day for kids to get their homework done, so they don't have to do it at night if kids are using that time. So there's time built in the school day. So I am hoping that we'll incorporate something like that, that, you know, when we have this conversation next year, because this is a topic that we do every year, that we'll find that our new schedule, our new bell schedule is actually helped, and that it's not quite as bad as this year. That's my hope. All right, well, it doesn't seem like there's any questions. Thank you guys for thank you for thanking us. And thank you for joining us. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, good weekend. Don't forget to set your clocks back this weekend on Sunday. Yeah, have a great Thursday. I won't see you, but enjoy your day off.
Thank you.